Cheers, beer runners, and welcome to another edition of the Friday Five. Wow, that is a sour beer. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Victory Brewing Company, but they are a brewery that holds a special place in my heart, not only because of their close proximity to where I grew up, but also because Victory Golden Monkey, believe it or not, was actually the first beer that I ever drank when I decided, as someone who may or may not have been of legal drinking age, that I wanted to try a beer. I went over to my friend's house and his sister decided to pick us up a case of Golden Monkey. If you've never had Golden Monkey before, it is a Belgian triple, so if you've never had beer before and that is the first introduction you have to the beverage, it is quite an introduction. It is very strong, very powerful, and I thought it was absolutely disgusting. Suffered through it for the night, but now, as I have aged and matured, it has become one of my favorite beers, and they have actually started brewing a sour monkey, which is a sour take on that original Golden Monkey recipe. It is delicious, but it is very pucker-inducing. So enough about the beer, but before we jump into this week's topic, don't forget that I am currently running a giveaway over on my Instagram channel, but you can actually gain extra entries here on YouTube, and that is a giveaway for Science in Sport, which is an electrolyte gel. I'm in the middle of product testing some of their samples now, and they are allowing me to run a giveaway where I can give away 2 6-packs to 2 individual winners, so 1 6-pack of their gels to each winner, and all you have to do is head over to my Instagram to the post. I'll link to it in the show notes below. Just head on over to that post, comment as many times as you'd like, and tag friends who you think would be interested in the product, and each person that you tag, each individual comment will be worth 1 entry. Make sure that you're following both me and the Science in Sport Instagram account, but then also, if you subscribe to me on YouTube or if you comment on any of my videos, I'll include 10 extra entries into the giveaway for you. So just make sure in your comment that you say what your Instagram handle is so I know who to credit the entries to, but I'll give you 10 extra entries for any comment that you leave on my YouTube videos. So without further ado, we got all the announcements out of the way. Let's jump into this week's topic. I'm actually really excited about this week's topic for the Friday Five because it was suggested to me by one of our regular viewers and a good friend of mine, Alexis, who has been running a lot recently and had some questions about how I go about the recovery process. And so I figured for this week's Friday Five, I would touch on my 5 favorite products that I use to really enhance my recovery, especially during difficult blocks of training. This is especially important to me now because I'm coming off of a running interval block of my training, so my mileage has been way down, but my running intensity has been way up with a lot of sprints, a lot of interval training, a lot of hill repeats and things like that, and I've also been nursing a little bit of a hamstring strain, so recovery has been hugely important. My legs have pretty much been constantly sore throughout this training block the last several weeks, and so really needed to focus on my off days on making sure that I'm putting in a conscious effort to make sure that my legs are recovering fully so that I can put in maximum effort during all of those workouts. So without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode, my 5 favorite products to use for enhanced recovery during running training. So to start things off, a product that was actually recommended to me by my physical therapist after my first half marathon. If you are not familiar with the story I've told a few times, when I ran my first half marathon, I went into training with zero knowledge on how to pursue long distance running. The longest race I'd done before that was a 5K as part of high school cross country. Just kind of Googled a training plan, went into it, like I said, with no prior knowledge or any information on like tips and tricks, things I should be worried about, things I should look out for, and really just focused on grinding out the miles. Definitely ran all of my training runs way too fast. Didn't warm up, didn't cool down, didn't stretch adequately, and destroyed my IT bands during that race. It was one of the most painful races of my life. I was pretty much out of commission for the next couple months after that as my legs recovered from that beating. So lots of physical therapy, and one of the first things that my physical therapist recommended I invest in is one of these guys. If you've never seen one of these before, it's called a stretch out strap, but if you are like me, I am supremely inflexible. My muscles are incredibly stiff, and so it is very difficult for me to do a lot of stretches that I know I need to do to benefit my legs and to help loosen them up after a tough run. So what's nice about this is it basically just extends your reach. So if you're not flexible like me, I have only just been able to touch my toes for the first time in my life earlier this year, but if I needed to do a toe touch or a hamstring stretch or something like that, I can just loop this around my foot and kind of use it as a way to pull myself towards my foot since I can't actually reach there. It also just gives you more range of motion in stretches that you're doing, so it's great for IT band because you can kind of pull your leg across your body. There are a bunch of different workouts that you can use this for, so very simple device, relatively inexpensive, but makes a huge difference in just some of your cool down stretching routines, so would highly recommend if you don't have have one of these, even if you are flexible, this can just help you get that extra leverage when you're pulling on a stretch and things like that. So would highly recommend the stretch out strap. Next up is everyone's favorite recovery device slash torture implement, and that is the foam roller. I'm sure you're familiar with this, so I won't go into too much detail, but if you aren't familiar, basically the idea behind this is you might have a sore spot. This is especially helpful if the sore spot is deep in a muscle. You can't seem to work it out with traditional stretching, or it's in a spot that's really difficult to stretch. Massage just isn't doing the trick. You can use this, put it on the floor, lay on it, put your full body weight on it, and just slowly roll over the sore area to kind of work out that tissue and help increase blood flow to hopefully aid in the recovery process. So like I said, everyone seems to have these days. They are a favorite among runners. They're really great for, I found on my IT band especially, but then also on my glutes, a really great way to stretch those out and just loosen up those tight sore muscles when they're angry at you. They will be even angrier when you first get on this thing, but within a couple minutes of getting off, you'll feel that immediate relief. So would highly recommend if you don't have a foam roller. I'll also link to a post in the show notes. I actually did a post on the blog about my favorite exercises to do with the foam roller, but this is a great device for recovery, for warm-up, things like that. It's just a great way to activate those muscles. And like I said, just break apart those tough to reach sore spots to help initiate that recovery process. Number 3 is very similar to the foam roller in that you're working on kind of breaking up that sore tender tissue to increase blood flow and enhance recovery, but I use it a lot more for smaller specific targeted areas of soreness. So the foam roller I tend to use on larger muscle groups, glutes, quads, hamstring, IT band, etc. But then when I have a smaller, tougher to reach spot, I reach for a massage roller because you have these little wheels, especially this little devil right here, that's great at just getting under a muscle or getting into a specific spot of soreness and just really digging in to work it out. Like I said, the idea is very similar. You're working on breaking apart that tissue, increasing blood flow to enhance recovery, but this you just have a little bit more flexibility or specificity as far as where you want to place it, and like I said, just using your own strength to kind of get in there and dig into the tender spot. Obviously with both the foam roller and with the massage roller, you want to be careful that you're not doing more damage. You want to make sure the pain you're feeling is what we call good pain, and usually you can kind of just base that off of your own perspective. It can hurt, that's definitely not unheard of and can be beneficial, but obviously you don't want to be hurting yourself too much. This shouldn't be too much torture, although a little bit of pain will help in the long run. So this guy right here, if you're interested, is from Add-A-Day. I got to test this at the running experience in November, and since then has easily become one of my favorite recovery implements slash torture devices, similar to the foam roller. But Add-A-Day is great. You should check out their company for sure. They have a bunch of different recovery products specifically. The whole idea of their company Add-A-Day is to add days onto your life by recovering properly and just taking health and rest seriously. So definitely check out their massage rollers. They have a bunch of different layouts of different knobs, different wheel sizes, things like that. I like this one, like I said, because it has the larger ones to get at some of the less specific areas, but then this guy, what I especially love to use on is like the Achilles tendon, or I was dealing with shin splints also, and you can kind of get this up under your calf and under the shin on the back side of your shin to roll out some of that pain as well. So hugely effective, hugely painful, but will definitely pay off if you use it correctly. Moving on to number 4, we are out of the torture devices and into products that are just purely focused on recovery. And what I want to talk about for number 4 is something that I think too many runners ignore in the sport of running, and that is strength training. It is so important to build strength training into your running. I learned this the hard way, like I said, in my first half marathon, how quickly my legs broke down and how much pain I was in after the race. What often happens to us as runners is when our support muscles, we don't focus on those, we don't strengthen them, things like your glutes, hips, core. When you're running, as you run, those weaker muscles that you haven't worked on developing start to break down, start to fatigue, and you're putting all of the stress on very specific points in your leg, your hamstrings, your quads, your hip flexors. And when you finish the race, you really feel how much stress you put on that. Whereas if you put in the time to focus on strength training throughout the race, all of those muscles are going to be working in tandem to support each other so that your legs are continuing to feel fresh. You don't feel that soreness set in during the race, and you especially don't feel it set in after the race. You will be amazed, even just building in strength training cool down routines 2 or 3 days a week, how much more quickly you will recover after a run as opposed to if you were doing no strength training. So I would highly recommend investing in a set of resistance bands. These I just got off Amazon. The company I think is LIMM. It looks a little bit weird. It's like 15 or 20 bucks on Amazon. You get a bunch of different colors. Each color is a different strength or different resistance that you're pulling against. And like I said, if you just do a Google search of resistance band workout routines, you can find dozens of different workouts that you can do for your legs. I like to do things that focus specifically on the muscles I've had issues issues with in the past. So things like glutes, hip flexor, core, to help support those IT bands, help support those hamstrings, especially the hamstring that I've been nursing now. But just finding a couple of workouts that you can do. I finish my run, I come home, I do 2 quick sets of little things with these bands, and just feel, like I said, feel those support muscles building up a little bit more strength so that they stay fresher throughout your runs, especially those long distance harder workouts, to save some of those core muscles that might fatigue otherwise or might feel that soreness that you're used to. It's hugely impactful. Just the littlest change or improvement in your strength training routine will pay off tenfold later on in how much more quickly you will recover from a tough workout. Sorry if I got a little bit rambly or preachy about strength training, but it is just something that it took me so long to realize the benefits of. So for anyone who isn't strength training already, I want to make sure that I instill now even the smallest change, just adding planks, adding squats, adding just 1 or 2 exercises after your workouts, resistance bands, things like that, after your runs is going to make such a big difference. And the sooner you start, the sooner you can start reaping those rewards. So without further ado, let's jump into number 5 before I hold you up any longer with strength training. I actually had a tough time choosing number 5 because I wanted to focus number 5 on what I thought to be the most essential tool that we have in our recovery arsenal. I went back and forth. I love the foam roller, love the resistance band, stretch out strap, the rolling pin as I like to call it from Adiday. There are so many things that we use for recovery, but one thing by far stood out among them all as the most important thing in our toolbox, and that is your pillow. I don't actually mean this pillow specifically. This pillow is a stand-in or a metaphor or a simile or imagery. I didn't do very well in high school English, but this is just to symbolize how much sleep you're getting every night. Sleep is by far the most important thing in our armory when it comes to runner recovery. If you are not getting enough sleep every night, that is the easiest way for your legs to start to break down over time, especially during those tougher blocks of training. It can seem counterintuitive because when we're doing our longest runs, we might be getting up earlier than we necessarily have the rest of the year to fit in those runs, but that means that you then need to be going to sleep earlier as well. If you haven't looked into so many of the studies that have been coming out recently about just how important sleep is, you will be amazed how quickly your body starts to break down even when you just miss 1 hour of sleep. And if you're missing an hour tonight, an hour tomorrow night, those hours do add up. And like I said, it is just mind-boggling how quickly those negative impacts start to hit you and how much more poor your performance is when you're going on lack of sleep. So the best thing that you can do, and the reason that I saved it for number 5, when you are sore, when you're doing tough training, when you're in the middle of a tough block of training or a significantly more difficult training period, is make sure that you are giving yourself enough time to sleep. There is a reason that I get in bed at 8 o'clock every night, even though I miss everyone's favorite TV shows, and it may drive my wife crazy at times how strict I am with sleep. It's so that I can relax, settle in before bed, make sure that I'm asleep by 9 so I can get up by 5, get my solid 8 hours, and make sure that I'm giving my body the time that it needs to fully recover overnight. Sleep really is when your body goes into full recovery mode and is able to do most of the repairs that it's going to need to do throughout the day, and so you just want to make sure that you're giving it the time to take out those operations properly. So like I said, I know it's silly, the pillow, but can't stress enough how important sleep is to the recovery process. So there you have it. Those are my 5 favorite tools when it comes to runner recovery. I think one thing that athletes are starting to realize is how important recovery is nowadays. Recovery doesn't just mean rest, it doesn't just mean taking a day off, it means active recovery and making sure that you're putting in the work to help your body get through the recovery process as fast as possible. The way you can do that is working on your flexibility, making sure that you're taking the time to stretch after a tough workout, focusing on some of those really sore, really tender spots in your muscles, some of those problem areas by using a foam roller or something like the massage roller as well to target some of those specific areas, making sure that you're building up those support muscles to support your legs so that they can last longer on race day, and making sure that you get enough sleep. Despite how easy it may sound, active recovery is actually, I think for me, one of the hardest parts of my training, just because when I'm not running, I would love to just lounge around on the couch. And sometimes that is what we need, but also if we do have the time to build in an actual recovery plan or recovery routine, it will make such a difference in your run training and allow you to not only run farther, run harder, but you'll hopefully see those benefits impact you on your next race day. So check out some of these products. If you have questions about them, like I said, please let me know in the comments below. Happy to answer any questions that you have. But that's it for this week's episode episode. Like I said, there's 1 week left of the giveaway that I'm running over on Instagram, so I'll link to that below. Head over to that picture and tag your friends in the comments to enter yourself in a chance to win some of those Science in Sport gels. But other than that, as always, congratulations on making it through another week. You made it to Friday. Enjoy the weekend. Hopefully the weather holds up. I think it's about to start storming here any minute, but we'll drink the storm away and just enjoy the weather while we can. Cheers.